Good afternoon. As always, I'll start with a brief synopsis of our last performance, although it seems like it's a long time ago now as we sit here. As I mentioned post-game, I was just really appreciative of, number one, the environment. I think we all had a certain level of anticipation of the type of environment we was going to be in, and I think that aided us in terms of preparing ourselves and the players for it. So that we could appreciate it and not fight against it, but enjoy it, while at the same time being able to be collectively focused on the task at hand, or our component of it, which is obviously playing winning football. And I just can't say enough about the guys in terms of their ability to absorb that responsibility while at the same time staying focused and making the required plays to win the game. Specifically in regards to the game, I thought, starting first with defense, obviously, I thought we had a really good performance, top to bottom. If you look at it in totality, area of needed improvement, I thought we could start faster. And I think there's been several instances during the course of the year where we hadn't started fast and we've settled down and end up playing good ball. But sometimes it's more significant than others, and it could have been significant in that game. They were a team that played behind their running game and was capable of possessing the ball, much like this game that we're getting ready to go into. And when you're playing in limited possession football games, like potentially we were playing in Carolina, like we're potentially going to be in this week, people that play behind their running game and try to possess the ball, you can't have slow starts. You just don't want to play from that posture. It aids them in their ability to play like that. And so we got to analyze that component of it. But, boy, we had some positive things to build upon and some playmaking. I thought we had some backups, man, ascend and contribute to our efforts. We had some attrition in game. Trey Norwood came into the game preparing to play a lot because of Edmonds' lack of availability. He goes down in game, and then Elijah gets an opportunity to play. And I think that's kind of just been reflective of that secondary group. We've had some instances where our depth has been challenged. I think one game, Tampa, I think we had a lot of people out. And so just can't say enough about how that collective is able to show their collective preparedness and work in those moments when our depth gets challenged. On the offensive side of the ball, we left points out there. I thought we moved the ball rather fluidly in the freewheeling zone. I think we stalled some in some red zone areas, not anything mystical. Drop passes and lack of execution, if you will. We turned the ball over in the red area. We can't do that. But largely, I saw some real positive things. It's really cool to kind of be in a moment with that unit and recognize the gravity of it. When we were 76 yards or so away from victory before we took the field, we kind of gathered and said, man, this is a growth opportunity. This is an opportunity to display our growth, to show people where we are in terms of the ground we've covered. And everybody to a man agreed to that. And they went out there and displayed that, and made plays and pushed the ball down the field. And that's what you do. That's what professionals do, quality professional individuals, quality professional units. They rise up in those weighty moments and deliver, and they did. And there are really probably some positive consequences for that as we move forward. There's growth, collective growth associated with that as you move forward. It's a place to hang your hat. That knowledge of being able to get things done in that way, I think, is significant for individuals and collectives. In the special teams game, we missed a couple kicks, man. And when you're in a limited possession game, you can't do that. And so I was thankful that Boz was able to make a couple, but we got to have the ones we missed, and that's just the reality of it, particularly as you lean in on a game like this one. These are always one-score type of games, and leaving 6 points out there would be significant. And so we got to get back to work and make sure we're really solid in that phase of the game, not only just in the field goal component of it, but all areas of the kicking game. And when you're playing Baltimore and they got Tucker and you're in these one-score games, the field positioning component of it is going to be big. And so all aspects of the special teams are big, the return game, the net punting, and things of that nature. From a health standpoint, before I get into specifically regarding Baltimore, Marcus Allen had bicep surgery yesterday, and he's in the process of recovery. We got a couple of guys who are dealing with injury, and we'll let their level of participation and the quality of their participation be our guide in terms of their availability. Miles Jack dealing with his groin continually, and Trey Norwood with the hamstring that he sustained in game. Now on to Baltimore. As I mentioned earlier, man, they play an attrition game. They play a limited possession game. They run the ball extremely well. They got a very diverse running attack. They challenge you with personnel groupings and pre-snap shifts and motions, all of which we're familiar with, but being familiar with doesn't necessarily solve the issues. You got to play really good football. And so we're readying ourselves for that as we prepare. We also acknowledge, man, that Mark Andrews is a significant guy for them in the passing game. He always has been, and even through some of their quarterback instability, continues to be dangerous vertical threat. I think to label him as a tight end is kind of, is kind of disrespectful to his talents. He's kind of a number one receiving option. He's like Travis Kelce, if you will, or that young guy in Atlanta. Their skill set and the plays that they make are kind of caged in if you describe them in a tight end sort of way. And so we've got some work there to try to minimize him. We got to familiarize ourselves with some new weapons they have. Sammy Watkins is an acquisition, a veteran guy that knows how to play, and we should be prepared for them to get contributions from him. Deshaun Jackson obviously was a guy that they had just acquired prior to our last meeting, and anytime you're playing veterans in a hotly contested matchup, man, the stage is not going to be too big for those gentlemen. And so we better acknowledge what they're capable of and how they divide the labor up in that area. On defense, man, I just really think it all starts with their linebacker tandem. We knew that the acquisition of Smith was significant. I think after having been in the stadium with them, you really feel it. I think the analytics bears that out, but it goes beyond just the numbers. I just think there's a presence there. There's leadership. There's communication. I think when they work in tandem the way that he and Queen do, they're a formidable bunch, man. They utilize them on possession downs when most people are going to dime and quarters, and that speaks to their athleticism and their talents, the fact that they leave those guys on the field the way that they do. And I think their productivity kind of justifies it. I mean, both guys had interceptions against us the last time we played them. They're just really quality, capable players. We're going to have our hands full there. But they got a lot of quality players on their defense, whether it's Calais up front and others, Houston and others, Marlon, Humphreys. They're a top-notch group, although their coordinator is new. He's not new to Baltimore. They got continuity that goes beyond a first-year coordinator. We talked about that last time, and I think that certain things that are Baltimore are prevalent regardless of coordinator or year. I just think that that's just a component of the continuity that is Harbs and that group. They're always very sound in the kicking game. I mentioned Tucker earlier. He's special. The field positioning component, their ability to score when they're at or around midfield because of his talents, you have to respect. He really limits you in the kickoff return game if he so chooses. He can put all the balls out of the back of the end zone if he so chooses. They're a really rock-solid group in that area. And so we're excited about this matchup. We're familiar with them. They're familiar with us. I think we're all familiar with being in significant games. And so, the new Steeler, the young Steeler, will kind of educate them, as I'm sure they will, the new or the young Raven. I think this is the 10th time that Harbs and I have played Sunday night ball together. He's an awesome dance partner. They're an awesome dance partner. It's just good to be in significant games. When I got the call the other night that the game was flexed, man, I didn't hate that. I love that. If your games are not getting flexed this time of year, you're not doing it right. You're not in significant ones. And so we don't run from that. We run to that, although we do respect their environment and the hostility of that environment on Sunday Night Football. We're not going to hate the fact that we're there. We're going to embrace that and smile in the face of the adversity that those variables create. I'll pause and open up for questions.
Mike, you didn't mention Terrell Edmonds' status, and when you use KZ in his position, does it change what Minka has to do?
We move Mika around week to week based on game planning, and it doesn't have a lot to do with who his partner may be. Edmonds is versatile in that way, allows us to do that. Casey is versatile in that way and allows us to do that. I'm assuming that TE is going to push back toward availability, but I just didn't want to be presumptuous. We'll let his participation and the quality of his participation be our guide, but I fully expect him to be available to us.
Like you talked about the growth that some guys collectively and individually displayed. When we asked them about that, a lot of guys pinpointed the bye week as maybe an inflection point. But the things you guys achieved during that period that helped set the stage for the second half here?
It's not necessarily physical work. Sometimes it's just having a pause in the action where you can analyze and acknowledge where you are positively, negatively, and make a commitment to doing what's required to get better, or lean on your positives and work to minimize your negatives. And that's what we did in all three phases. And I give the guys credit, man, just their general receptiveness to it and the changes that we did make, they got behind. And plans are great, but the execution of plans are what makes plans special. And they've done a really nice job of kind of doing some of the things that we've highlighted.
Mike, on the topic of growth, could you have predicted from the beginning of the season to now, especially with the rookie quarterback, just the amount of growth that you've been able to see?
Yes. That's why we work every day. We're really intentional about the environment that we create. It's reasonable to expect guys to get better. Very reasonable.
What's the dynamic like whenever you play a team that you just played a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, and how does it affect the type of adjustments that you guys make based on?
I've been in this league long enough to know that, man, you could roll two teams out on back-to-back days and the game could unfold differently. And so, although we did play them a couple of weeks ago and there's some things to be gleaned from that, I don't think either party is hanging their hat on how that transpired or that component of it. I just think that, particularly in today's scheduling, it happens every year, particularly backloaded divisional games. We're playing, one of these divisional teams in a 2 or 3 week span. It seems like just about every December or so. So I don't think it's new to us. I don't think it's new to any of us in the NFL. But I think we all acknowledge that the texture of one game doesn't necessarily dictate the texture of another.
Speaking of being in the league long enough, in the time you've been in the league, is it any more difficult or complex trying to defend a running game?
It's probably more so today because of quarterback mobility, the design quarterback run component of it. It's 11-on-11 football. It's mathematics. Traditional offenses, non-running quarterbacks, they play with 10 essentially in the running game. When you have quarterback mobility and the willingness to use it, you play with 11. And so whether the quarterback has the ball or not, you have to account for him. And so obviously that makes run defense more challenging. Obviously, that's why teams with quarterback mobility perform really well in running the ball. Chicago has their struggles, but they're a challenging run team because they got quarterback mobility, for example.
Teams, coach, come back to the run now?
I just think the more you see quarterback mobility, and if you look at college football or high school football for that matter, they're the best athletes on the team. And so I think it's reasonable to expect that not only to continue, but to expand.
Along those lines then, as you have seen now Huntley twice playing for Jackson, are you noticing is there a lot of difference in how they approach their run game? Are they leaning more on the backs when Huntley is in there, and does that make it any more of a challenging dynamic to prepare?
No, I think that it's very similar in terms of their ability to utilize the quarterback position by design or to make sure you're responsible for it. And so whether or not the quarterback is carrying the ball or not, you have to be responsible for them as they carry out play fakes and so forth that mirror other coordinated runs. And so whether it's Huntley or Jackson, all of those things have been very similar.
What did you learn from that tape that you feel is carried over defensively as far as stopping the run, and how does that play?
We'll see. You like to think you learn lessons, but the application of those lessons really is the display of learning, and so we'll see.
Mike, Rob Spillane hasn't left the field on defense the last 2 weeks. Is that because of the run aspect, or is that more because of the quarterbacks aren't as mobile as maybe what you?
It's all of the above, man. We just like what Rob has been doing. He plays physical. Rob is a guy that has been in continual growth since he's been here. Coming in as an undrafted guy and practice squatter and working his way through, making the team and becoming a core teamer and part-time defender, and now increasingly so, almost an every down defender. I just think what you're seeing is the maturation or growth process of a quality professional, no different than Alex Highsmith, for example. We believe in being a part of the development of guys and watching them grow and develop within a system of football, and we expect them to get better. As we were talking about the other discussion, the position is irrelevant. We expect guys to get better every day and those results to show in their play.
Mike, surely your players know the situation and what it needs to get into the playoffs. Do you even venture down that road and mention it?
No, we're going to focus on the things that were in our control, and that's our preparation and then what we do inside the stadium on Sunday night. We acknowledge all those scenarios and things exist, but all of those scenarios and things have existed since September 11th, since we started the season. Every time you step on the field, there's high urgency. You get 17 opportunities to state a case for yourself. We have lived in that urgency. We understand it. So we're not going to waste any time talking about it. We didn't waste any time talking about it in September. We're going to stay focused on preparing and then ultimately playing this game.
This might go back to what Jeff asked, but to the point about the rush defense getting better after that Baltimore game, did you find that tape to be teach tape in the sense that they saw X and O things that they were doing poorly and needed to improve upon, or was it just motivational in the sense that, hey, look, this could be a tilting point for the rest of our season, this aspect of our game?
You know, I don't know that was a fork in the road, if you will, for our run defense. More than anything, I thought we had a bad day. I think our run defense has been really solid over the second half of the year. It wasn't reflected in our play that day. There's nothing we can do about that. That tape's in the can. We're preparing for this tape that we're going to put out on Sunday night.
Mike, you mentioned the stuff that Roquan and Queen can do. How do you minimize their impact in the game?
You don't. You know, obviously we got to be sharp. We got to try to get hats on them and things of that nature, but they're going to be on the field just about all circumstances. It's not personnel groupings and things of that nature that take them off the field and minimize them in that way. They're just really quality players.
Anything else?
Mike, you planning to head over to Acrisure later today?
Yes.
Also, just to follow up on that, we heard a couple inklings of who may have got the game ball on Saturday.
I'm going to leave that business in-house.
You always talk about the weighty moments, the tilting moments in the game. What did you like the most about that drive that the offense put together at the end of the game, and what gelled there that hadn't perhaps in the rest of the game?
You know, I don't know about relative to the rest of the game, but when you're in those weighty moments and you're looking around at people, you like to feel their presence. And in a lot of instances, I did. I didn't see big eyes. I saw sure eyes. I saw guys that understood what was at stake and guys that looked prepared to go do it. Now, you got to go do it, but I like the feel of the group leading up to it.
Mike, was part of that growth that you saw, it's a rookie quarterback, it's a rookie receiver, second-year tight end, it's your young people responding.
Yeah, second-year running back who was big in the check down game in that drive, and so you can't run away from that. You can't act like those realities don't exist. But I've been pretty consistent in my messaging. I acknowledge that in a lot of ways those individuals and that collective is in the process of growth. But while doing so, I'll continue to acknowledge that they're good enough to win while doing so. And we don't grade on a curve in terms of what we expect in terms of the outcome of games.
Najee was involved in the pass game more so than any point this year, much like last year. Was it a concentrated effort, circumstantial?
Probably a little bit of both, yes.
I think that's 2 fourth-quarter drives by Kenny. You always said he had that look, that moxie. Where does that come from?
I imagine he was born with it, man. I know that it's not the first time I've seen it. I know it's not the first time that people from Western PA have seen it. We've seen him do it next door. I think that's why we had such a great deal of comfort in his intangible quality. And from a draft evaluation perspective, we were in close proximity to it. And when you're in close proximity to it, it becomes less intangible. You can almost feel it. It is real. I don't think any of us are surprised by it.
Anything else? All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.